व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। Since a few sessions from the past, we are talking about the topic of physics. So in the last session, we were talking about the 4 parts of work, which is mentioned in Turiyo Manushya Vadanti, that is Para Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari, that is being beautifully explained by Bhartrhari in his Vakyapadiya. And then the Kriti Vatapi Ganapatim Bhaje of Muthuswami Dikshitar. Also, we have in the second charana 3 aspects pertaining to sound we were discussing in the last session. One is Mooladhara Kshetra Sthitam. Second is Paradi Chatvari Vagatmakam. And third is Pranava Swarupam. So we have dealt with the first 2 in the last session. That is Mooladhara Kshetra Sthitam. That is the 6 chakras. Among the basic is Mooladhara, and there Paravak is residing, and what is the state of energy, conscious level, the energy that is involved in that, and also the type of body which is involved. We have all discussed in the last session. So in this, the third word, Pranava Swarupa, is remaining. So what is Pranava Swarupa? Pranava Swarupa is Pranava is Omkara. So Ganapati is Pranava Swarupa. So how? We will come to know at the end of this session of Omkara. So what does the symbol Om mean? The meaning of the Om symbol, Om is a sacred sound or vibration that is known generally as the sound of the universe. Om is all encompassing, the essence of ultimate reality, and unifies everything in the universe. The Om sound is short Bija mantra, which is chanted to connect with the chakras and to energize the chakras. See, Om is all encompassing. That is all the languages of the world and all the things which are known and unknown to us come in the circumference of Om, the Upanishads say. That is the essence of ultimate reality. It shows us the way or the path to reach Parabrahman, and it unifies everything in the universe. That is, it unifies, it says, or it concludes, or it proves and elevates to everything to Parabrahman, and in that ultimate reality or entity. So this Om is a very short word. This is Bija mantra, which is chanted to connect the chakras, and which is chanted to energize the chakras within us, they say. So the effect of Vedic chant on brain. Dr. James Hertzel, an American neuroscientist, has conducted the experiment with the help of National Brain Research Center which is situated in Manesar in Haryana, and he has come to the conclusion that it enhances the power of brain. So he has coined the word the Sanskrit effects. He writes that memorizing Vedic mantras increases the size of brain regions associated with cognitive functions such as memory, both short term and long term memories. And let us listen to this first, and then we shall go back to our presentation.
Brain. What we did was we compared professionally trained Vedic pundits, Yajurveda pundits, and we found really large differences in brain matter and cortical thickness between the two groups. So this is what's called a cross-section study.
समस्त विश्वस्य वैज्ञानिकानां गहनानुसन्धानेन इदं प्रामाण्यते यत् सनातन वैदिकश्रुति परम्परायाः विधिरयं मानव मस्तिष्कं कियदधिकं सक्रियं कुरुते। पुनरपि सिद्धयति यत् संस्कृतभाषा निजभव्यता दिव्यता शुद्धता सिद्धता दिविः कियति समृद्धा वैज्ञानिकी च वर्तते।
So, from his observation, he has come to these three observations from his research and experiment that he has reported in the journal Scientific American. He has coined the word Sanskrit effect. He writes that memorizing Vedic mantras increases the size of brain regions associated with cognitive functions such as memory, both short term and long term. So he has observed that the Sanskrit learning, that too Vedic learning or Vedic chanting, will increase the size of the brain regions associated with cognitive functions such as memory. Long term, it might be long term memories or it might be short term memories. He writes in his report that Indian tradition holds the that righteously memorizing and reciting mantras enhances memory and thinking. So the thinking level is taken to the thought process is taken to a higher level, and the memory, the power of memory is also taken to a higher level in the people who have studied Vedas or who are in the practice of reciting Vedas from their childhood. In order to test this idea, Herzl and his colleagues from the University of Toronto in Italy teamed up with Dr. Tanmaynath and Dr. Nandini Chatterjee Singh of the National Brain Research Center at Manesar in Haryana. So for this study, they chose 42 students, 21 from Vedic school from Delhi, and 21 of the same age group, peer group from the nearby college. And they chose that the students from where Sanskrit studies, Sanskrit students, they chose the people who had learned continuously for 7 years and who were practicing the chanting of Veda. So for this, he has chosen Shukla Yajurveda for recitation. So the Pandits were recruited. So the brain imaging, the brains of all the 42 participants were examined using the method called structural magnetic resonance with magnetic resonance imaging instrument at NBRC, that is MRI. This allows the study of the size and shape of the individual parts of brain. The gray matter of the brain is a region full of neuronal cells and contains areas involved in muscle control, sensory perception, memory, emotions, speech, and decision making. And connected to it is the white matter, bundles of nerve cell that carry signals to gray matter. The hippocampus is a small organ located within the central region of the brain, and it registers and regulates emotions associated with memory, particularly long term memory, and has front and back sections. The back part appears associated with better memory and supports recollection of memory. And the cortex, which is the outermost layer surrounding the brain, with its tightly packed nerve cells, is responsible for higher thought process such as decision making. So the cortex had become thick, and the brain area was enlarged. The size had enlarged by the chanting of Vedas in the students in the chanting of Vedas. The Indo-Italian team analyzed the brain regions of 21 Pandits and 21 controlled volunteers and found some remarkable differences between the two. That is, the analysis showed that the gray matter in Pandits to be denser and the cortex to be thicker than in the controls, that is, who have not studied Vedas. That was the part was thinner, and the gray matter was not as much as denser. The gray matter was lighter, but in the case of the Vedic Pandits, the gray matter was denser, and also the cortex had become thicker. And the hippocampus regions associated with long and short term memory was more pronounced. So was done the indeed a similar experiment again using Vedic Pandits uh, in Houston, Texas, USA, was done earlier by Dr. Giridhar Kalamangalam and T.M. Elmore, and they too noted thicker cortex in the Pandit than in controls. Importantly, these changes in the brain are not temporary but stay for long. That means that the power of memory, decision making, sensory perception, and such would last longer in those who were trained earlier. That is, the Vedic scholars had these qualities greater than the scholars who had not studied Sanskrit or who had not studied Vedas since the beginning. And analysis also shown that it is not only Sanskrit alone this character persists, but they have given some other examples of French scientists noted that Christian monks who chanted the Gregorian chants had exceptional memory, though no brain scanning methods were available at that time. And also, Further, it need not be verbal or religious chanting at all. It could be a visual or spatial training too. And in long back in London, the taxi drivers had to go through an extensive course called knowledge. In this course, each driver is taught and uh, had to memorize the spatial location of every street, monument, and tourist spot across Greater London before being given taxi driver license. He needs no GPS. One is also reminded of how the multiplication tables we had learned by rote in primary school in India comes in handy decades later when we go shopping in stores. So, incidentally, several years ago, a scientist claimed that listening to the music of European composer Mozart helps in the memory and smartness and termed it as Mozart's effect. Naturally, the school children and the parents were rushed towards that. They bought, and soon enough, it was found that the effect was not long lasting. So, the effect lasts only when the music was played. The kids felt more relaxed and smooth. After the music stopped, the effect vanished. The Mozart effect did not last long. So, the oral tradition of Vedic teaching and learning in India from times immemorial is showing that it is enhancing the power of brain, it is enhancing the cognitive parts of the brain, it is enhancing the cognitive powers of the brain. So now the Western thinkers and the Western scientists are converging towards the Indian knowledge. It is I think it is a positive sign, and I am happy too about it. So, systematic exercise also helps in memorizing training. Even during later life, when we are old, we need not have been pandits. Indeed, uh, so even the systematic exercise or of brains by doing memory training can enhance the power of brain, they say, but they are all not as long lasting as the Vedic chanting, they say. Yes. The sound Om is formed by three letters A, U, and M. The chanting Om. Let us listen to this now.
It is about chanting. Om chanting. Now the mantra in this is Om. It is made up of three syllables, A, O, and M. Right? So why does it have three syllables? Because essentially it's about the Hindu gods of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Yeah. So those are the three gods that are universal, the Trinity. And these sounds come from different parts of our body. They also heal different parts of our body or work at different parts of our body. For instance, the which is the first sound in this mantra, comes from here, just below your navel, this area. Yeah. So if you say it with me. You'll see a tightening and loosening of this area. You bring your breath in. Because remember that whenever we do a chanting of mantra, especially the Om mantra, we will breathe out the mantra, because we're saying it, when we're speaking out, we are releasing breath, we're releasing life, we're releasing energy into the universe. And that energy comes from the bottom of us. It comes through our being. So mantras are always good as vehicles of healing. I'll talk more about the healing. So I told you about the first syllable. The second syllable is this you make with your lips slightly pursed, so which means that you're doing something like this. When your lips are pursed, the vibration rises within you, within this area. So it's very good for instance, for chest ailments, for anything that's to do with your thoracic region. This mantra is really, really good. Like I was telling you in the beginning, for any kind of ailments in the lower back, in your backbone, in your stomach area, in your abdominal area, the A part of the Om is very good. The second part is the O. That's very good for anything in this area. And the third is when you shut your lips, quite literally, when you're doing. Just do it with me. Just do it. You'll see that vibration. It will be between your ears. It cannot be anywhere else. So you do. That's the third sound of Om. And that is the sound that actually affects all of this region. It gets your head vibrating, it gets your eyes vibrating, gets your lips vibrating, gets your jaws vibrating, gets your cunt, which is basically this area, the area of your voice box, your larynx, gets all of that vibrating. And that is the power of this particular mantra. So it's very simple. It's made up of 3 syllables, and you can do it for. So let's talk about a little bit about the benefits. The benefits of this. First, I said it actually heals different areas of your body. Especially, I've seen that I worked a lot with this on people, and 2 areas that it is extremely good at healing. One is anything that you have to do with your spinal cord. So if you have a slip disc, for instance, or if you have a lower backache, this is a brilliant mantra to let go. It is a brilliant mantra to be practiced every single day. How many times you can do it? Technically, you're supposed to do it in multiples of 9. So the ideal amount to do it would be to do it 108 times. That is the ideal that you can do it every single day. And it brings up the energy. So remember, when you're doing the Om, we'll do it once or twice, and I'll show it to you how it brings up the energies of your body, right up like that. You can see the energy, you can feel the energies traveling. So, like I was saying, the first healing is of course with your abdominal area. The second healing is with your thoracic area. The third healing is in the mind. It is extremely good. Again, like I was saying, 2 areas. The first area with the spinal cord. The second area is anybody who has mental conditions. Now, people I have seen who have, for instance, a slight psychiatric condition or are a little imbalanced. Yeah, this is a brilliant mantra for them. Why? Because the vibrations come into this area of your mind. They actually, I'm showing you this diagram, which actually shows you the areas that it benefits or the areas that it calms down and benefits as far as the mind is concerned. So anybody with a little bit of a mental disorder, of course, I never say don't take the medicine, but I'd say along with the medicine, please do the Om chanting, because Om chanting is really, really good. Also, the big question that everybody asks, a lot of people ask this question, is this scientifically proven that the Om chant is good for you? Okay, here's a chart on that. It's self-explanatory. I'll give you the details. It proves that there is scientific evidence that says that Om chanting is good for the mind, it's good for the body, and it has healing properties. A study by G. Kalyani and team from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in Bangalore used advanced magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, on a set of volunteers chanting Om and just the word S. The study found that in the case of Om chanting, there was a significant deactivation in brain activity, thereby meaning that chanting Om actually switches your brain into relaxation mode. In another study conducted by Dr. Hemant Bhargav and his team at NIMHANS in Bangalore on 80 students who did Om chanting after using their mobiles for 30 minutes, found that Om chanting had a stimulating effect on the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body and travels all the way from the brain to the abdominal area. The stimulation of the vagus nerve in the brain means that anxiety and depression are better controlled. And in the gut, it means that there's increased stomach activity, better digestion, and better secretion of juices within the stomach cavity, leading to better digestion. According to the results of a 2016 study by the Mark University professors Dr. Bill Thompson and Dr. Vince Poltio, chanting of the Om mantra for 10 minutes improved attention, contributed towards a positive mood, and increased feelings of social cohesion. The chanting of the Om mantra leads to an increase in vibrational activity both in the body and in the mind, and the effects are lasting.
The primary law is the law of vibration. The law of vibration is one of the basic laws of the universe. It decrees that everything moves, nothing rests. We literally live in an ocean of motion. Do you know that everything is an expression of the same thing? The leaves, the tree, the cement, the body, the clothes. It's all energy at a different rate of vibration.
So the subatomic particles we see in nature, the quarks, the electrons, are nothing but musical notes on a tiny vibrating string. What is physics? Physics is nothing but the laws of harmony that you can write on vibrating strings. What is chemistry? Chemistry is nothing but the melodies you can play on interacting vibrating strings. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of vibrating strings.
So we're going to do it once or twice so that you can get into the idea and then you can practice it on your own. Of course, I also have another video which tells you exactly how to do it. Yeah, and that's the Om chanting video, which of course I'm attaching to it. So let's start it. Yeah. So you first have to sit in a comfortable position, which is the kind of position that I'm sitting in right now. This is your chin mudra or your Gyan mudra. Okay, so you take your index finger and your thumb and you bring them together. All the three of your fingers, the other fingers, the rest of your fingers are just sitting comfortably as they are. It's like a lotus pose. And you bring that down to your knees. You can sit on the floor, you can sit on a chair. Both are equally comfortable and both work as far as the chanting of this mantra is concerned. So let's close our eyes. Yeah. Your back has to be straight. That's the most important thing with this mantra. The back has to be straight, the eyes are closed, and slowly breathe in deeply. Now you have to prepare for this mantra. So breathe in deeply. And then gently breathe out. And then when you breathe in, and then you breathe in again. So there's a gap at the end of this. That gap always, that's the fourth element of this, the element of silence. So when you're doing it, we'll do it once more just to show you. So you breathe in. Always breathe in nice and deep, as far in as you can take your breath. Please take it and fill up your lungs, fill up your thoracic area. Breathe in really deeply. Okay, so I'm going to give you a version of the Om chant. This is essentially I'm doing it 9 times with you just now, so that we can just settle into it. And then after that, of course, about here, I've got the link for 108.
Yes, just listen to Om here and which parts of the brain are activated by the chanting of Om. These are the parts that are activated by the chanting of Om in the brain. So it shows how it calms the mind and relaxes the human being from tension. So in ancient India, a lot of importance was given to this sound, and a detailed study is being done from times immemorial. Omkara is called Pranava, also which literally means sounded loudly. The Taittiriya, Chandogya, Mandukya, uh, Kaushitiki, and other Upanishads talk about Om being the highest ever spiritual entity attributed to the creation of the entire world. It is considered to be the universe itself. All these Upanishads claim that Om is the creator of the universe, and Omkara itself is the universe. It acts like Brahma, it is the creator, it is the protector, and this sound itself is the devastator, and it is considered to be the universe itself, as it is ever pervaded in the universe. It is present in all over, it is present all over the universe, they say. Let us see what are some of these Upanishads. Kathopanishad says the Om is, when Om is uttered with concentration, there arises the consciousness of Brahman in the mind. See, now just we have listened to the chanting of Om, and the narrator was telling that the it will energizes the chakras, and it will elevate the energy level in us. So Kathopanishad says the same thing. There arises the consciousness of Brahman in the mind. Therefore, Om is the nearest symbol helping the concentration of the mind, leading to the realization of Brahman. See, in the coming uh, slide, we are going to tell what are the benefits of Om chanting. So here, Kathopanishad is saying one of the benefits here, that is, it is the nearest symbol helping in the concentration of the mind. So the chanting of Om helps the mind to concentrate, and which leads to the realization of Brahman. The principle of this process is known as Shakha Chandra Nyaya. Yes, let us not go in detail into that. Thus, Prashnopanishad says, the knower through the support of Om attains to one or the other. That is, through the meditation of Om, one can realize both Parabrahman and Aparabrahman. See, there are, in the last session, we were talking about Shabda Brahman and Ashabda Brahman. Shabda Brahman is the vibratory sound which is persisting or which is pervading the whole universe, and Ashabda Brahman is that which is Apara Brahman, associated without names and forms, or attributeless Brahman, that is called as Parabrahman, and Apara Brahman is having, which is having Namarupa, this is called Shabda Brahman. And Shabda Brahman, if we are well versed in Shabda Brahman, it leads us to Parabrahman, says Maitrayani Upanishad. Let us recall that now. So Taittiriya Upanishad indicates that both Saguna and Nirguna Brahman have the same substratum, which is the Nirguna attributeless Brahman, are the highest reality. Chandogya Upanishad prizes Om as the ultimate reality of Parabrahman. But Mandukya Upanishad explains this aspect beautifully. See, in the Om is made up of three parts: Akara, Ukara, and Makara. Here, Akara represents Vishwa, that is the existence of things with concrete form and shape such as trees, earth, and so on. Ukara is implies anything formless such as air, water, fire, and so on. Makara signifies which neither have shape nor are shapeless and yet pervade the universe, such as the cosmic energy. The combination of the three syllables forms the complete picture, the Om, thus containing the whole universe within itself. So Gaudapada has written a beautiful karika to explain this. According to Gaudapada, the letter A leads to Vishwa, the letter U leads to Taijasa, the letter M leads to Prajna. With regard to one freed from letters, three remains no attainment. Mandukya Karika 1st and 23rd Shloka. Om is Shabda Brahman. Om is the root sound of which creation is a series of permutation. The first quarter is Vaishvanara, that is Jagarita Sthano Bahish Prajna Saptanga Ekonavimshati Mukhaha Sthulabhug Vaishvanaraha Prathamaha Padaha. The first quarter is Vaishvanara, whose sphere is the waking state, that is Jagrat, who cognizes external objects, who has 7 limbs and 19 mouths, and who experiences the gross objects. Yes, let us come to 7 limbs and 18 limbs a little later. The first aspect of Atman is the self in the waking state, that is Jagrat state, Vaishvanara. It is the first state of consciousness, is turned outward to the external world. Through its 7 instruments and 19 channels, it experiences the gross objects of the phenomenal world. So, what are the 7 instruments here? The 7 instruments are more macrocosmic instruments. That is, the first consciousness manifests outwards as elements, 5 great elements, that is space, air, fire, water, and earth, along with the individuation, Jivatma, from the whole, and the flow of energy, which we know as the pulsing impulse towards breath. So, 19 channels. Then the individual operates through the 4 functions of mind, aspects of Antahkarana, the inner instrument, which are Chitta, Ahankara, and Buddhi. Those 4 operate through 5 Vayus: Prana, Apana, Samana, Udana, and Vyana. The 5 active senses are Indriyas, Karmendriyas of eliminating, procreating, moving, excreting, grasping and speaking, and the 5 cognitive senses, Jnanendriyas of smelling, tasting, seeing, touching, and hearing. So, this is the first part, that is Akara, is explained like this. That is the Vishwa, or that is the gross objects, or what are we are seeing and what are we are experiencing, what we are hearing, are all Akara of Omkara. So next letter is U. So it is called as Taijasa in Mandukya Karika. That is, Taijasa means endowed with light. Mantra number 4 of Mandukya Upanishad in Agama Prakarana reads, Swapnasthanontah prajnaha saptangaha eko navimshati mukhaha praviviktabhuk taijaso dvitiyaha padaha. The second quarter of Taijasa, second pada of Taijasa, whose sphere of activity is dream state, that is Swapna, who is conscious of the internal world of objects, who has 7 limbs and 19 mouths, and who enjoys the subtle objects of the mental world. Now we have discussed about 7 limbs and 19 mouths. So the reality consciousness, conditioned by its own identification with the subtle body, becomes dreamer and experiences the dream world as Taijasa. The waking state ego has 19 mouths. I'll repeat: the 5 organs of action, the 5 aspects of prana, the vital breath, the mind, intellect, ahankara, and chitta. The Atman manifesting through the grass body, Vaishvanara, is 7-limbed. The dreamer enjoys the subtle world of objects because he is aware only of the inner world. So when we are sleeping, we will not be aware what is going outside us. So this state of consciousness is called as Swapna. Taijasa, the luminous and whose sphere of action is dream. Here the syllable U of Om, because it is exalted and because it is the intermediate, it occurs between A and M. So when in the last slide, in the pronunciation of Omkara, he was explaining that. So when you pronounce U of Omkara, the level of energy is raised from Muladhara. So the same thing is explained here. It is Vaishvanara and Prajna, identical but itself being unreal appearance. The secret of the intermediate U is that the listener of the sound syllable becomes the knower of truth or reality. So you being labial modifies speech represented by the sound syllable A, which is primordial guttural sound, and then sinks into the silence M, which measures both A and U and absorbs them. So this is the intermediate word. Intermediate syllable. So the second aspect of Atman is dreaming state. In the second state, consciousness is turned towards the inner world. It also operates through 7 instruments and 19 channels, which engage the subtle objects of the mental dream. Yatra supto na kanchana kamam kamyate न कंचन स्वप्नं पश्यति तत् सुषुप्तास्थान एकीभूतः प्रज्ञानघनः एव आनन्दमयो ह्यानन्द भुक् चेतो मुखः प्रज्ञास्त्रित त्रित त्रितयः पादः. So the third says, the third aspect of Atman is the self-operating in deep sleep state, that is Sushupti. That is called as Prajna. This is the third state. There is neither the desire for any gross or subtle object, nor any dream. We will not be having the desire of having any worldly objects, or of the objects which have no form also. In deep sleep, all such experiences have receded or merged into the ground of undifferentiated consciousness. So this is called as undifferentiated consciousness, which is not different from the universal reality itself. So here one is filled with the experience of bliss and can also find the way to clearer knowledge of the two preceding states. So the one who experiences all of these states of consciousness is the omniscient, indwelling source and director of all. This one is the womb out of which all of other emerges. All things originate and dissolve back into this source. So, this Omkara is the Yesha सर्वेश्वरः एष सर्वज्ञः एषोऽनन्तर्याम्येषः योनिः सर्वस्य प्रभावाप्यायु हि भूतम्. So one who experiences all of these states of consciousness, that is, if we pronounce Omkara, or if we meditate on Omkara seriously, daily, 108 as told by the proctor, then one can reach to this level, says Mandukya Upanishad. The fourth aspect is Turiya. The fourth aspect of Atman is self, literally the fourth. In this fourth state, conscious is neither turned outer nor inward, nor it is in both outward inward. It is beyond both cognition and the absence of cognitions. So this is why that is called as Turiya. The silence that we experience after uttering Om, the fourth part of Om, as said by the Guru there. Though the senses of know by comparison, deductive reason or inference, it is indescribable, incomprehensible. So it is, as we cannot, as another object of Om or universe is not existing in universe, you cannot compare it with anyone. So if you can compare animals, or you can compare men. You can compare men with animals or animals with men. That can be done. But there is no other sound which can be compared to Om in this world. So, it is not known by comparison. And Turiya cannot be experienced through senses. No sense organ can see or touch or listen or smell the Turiya sthiti. It is indescribable, incomprehensible, and unthinkable with the mind. Unthinkable because that state is beyond the reach of our minds and words. Mano vacha magocharaha. So this state of consciousness is beyond our mental reach, beyond our verbal reach. So this is pure consciousness itself. So this is the real self. And from this real self is considered as Brahman, which is called as, as we say in the first part of Vishnu Sahasranama, Yatas Sarvani Bhutani Bhavantyadiyugagame Yasminscha Pralayam Yanti Punareva Yugakshaye. According to Taittiriya Upanishad Bhrigu, the description of Brahma given by Varuna to Bhrigu is Utpatti Sthiti Laya Karanam Brahma. Utpatti, created. Sthiti is protecting, sustenance. And Laya is devastation. So all these three is done by whom? That aspect is called as Brahma. So here Omkara is having those three aspects. So Swami Krishnananda, you go through the speeches of Swami Krishnananda about Mandukya Upanishad. They are beautiful, and that is so how we are going from Namarupa state to Namarupa less state M. The journey is explained beautifully by Krishnananda. So I'll quote from him. For example, if you are addressed as Maharaj, you are pleased. But if you are addressed as an ass, you are displeased. The reason is the association that you have established in your mind and feeling between the name Maharaja and its corresponding significance, or the name as and its corresponding significance. Names create vibration within us. Suppose anyone suddenly cries out, snake, snake. Just now, we will get up suddenly and listen to nothing. We sort what sort of vibration it creates in our mind. The word snake, we have established a contact in our psychological being between the name snake and its corresponding meaning or significance and its connection with us. It means that we know very well. Every name in the world has a form and a meaning attached to it. Every form is not merely a counterpart of the name with which it is connected, but it has a relation with other forms as well. So we come from what we call Ishvara Srishti to Jiva Srishti. Ishvara Srishti is the form corresponding to a name as it's by its own light. Jiva Srishti is the psychological connection that we have established between ourselves and corresponding form of a particular name. We are affected because of the Jiva Srishti, and our understanding of the form corresponding to a name signifies merely Jiva Srishti. We are now concerned not merely with Ishvara Srishti, but also Jiva Srishti. Perhaps with the latter, we are more concerned than with the former, because what binds us or liberates us in the nature of Jiva Srishti, not so much as the nature of Ishvara Srishti. That is why Shankaracharya says, Iha samsare bahudustare kripaya pare pahi murare. Because we will be attached to many things in this world, many people in this world, people, our own kids and kins, and our neighbors, and we are attached to the non-living things. We are attached to our homes, we are attached to our books, we are attached to our pens, we are attached to our things, what we own, or we think what we own. So we are attached to all those things, and this meaning it is that binds us, and what we call samsara, that is earthly existence or worldly existence. Because every name has a corresponding form, and the form is content of Ishvara Srishti and the creation of Ishvara, God. And we, as a jiva or an individual, though we are also a part of Ishvara Srishti, create a cocoon around ourselves, coil ourselves in a web that has been created by our own imagination, and thus imagination connects us with other jivas, other things, other contents of creation socially. So, we not merely exist as a content of creation, we also have a connection with other contents in the creation in several ways. This is the difference between we as a part of Ishvara Srishti and as a center of Jiva Srishti. We have an aspect of Ishvara in us and also a Jiva Tattva in us. The aspect of Ishvara is of dignified nature. The aspect of Jiva is what binds you or us to this realm of samsara. So, we have twofold nature, a double personality, a character that distinguishes us by means of our relation to Ishvara and our relation to this earthly life. So, the Upanishad of Mandukya suggests that a very simple method for the establishment of Jiva in Ishvara to transfer the relation of the personality to the non-relation of Ishvara, and to achieve this by a direct method of invoking the presence of Ishvara or Brahman into our being, summoning Ishvara into our consciousness. Give Ishvara a place in your heart. Instead of thinking of an object corresponding to a particular name, think of Ishvara, who is designated by a comprehensive name. All the names of the world, like mountain, river, etc., are a particular names corresponding to particular forms. But Ishvara is not a particular form. He is a universal form, and therefore you cannot call him or summon him by particular name. You have to call him by a universal name. So that is called as Om. So Om is the universal name of Ishvara. So we have to give a place to him in our heart. Then all our worldly bondages will be removed, as explained by Swami Krishnananda in his work Mandukya Upanishad. So it is a beautiful work. You can also go through it. So Yes, Mandukya Upanishad starts with Om ityetadev aksharam idam sarvam tasyopavyakyanam bhutam bhavat bhavishyaditi sarvam omkara eva. So this is the imperishable Om, and it is all this. Everything else, whatever be of the past, present or future, is like an exposition, explanation or commentary on the meaning of this great truth. It is the imperishable or eternal sound or vibration Om. Sarvam Omkara Eva. Everything is Om indeed. This is how the Upanishads begins, and then that is why they say Om Ityekaksharam Brahma. We can refer to Ekakshari Upanishad from Krishna Yajurveda. It uh, gives the beautiful explanation of this. So, let us know what are the benefits of chanting Om. So, as the Guru was telling, it helps to improve concentration, reduces stress and anxiety in us, rejuvenates and pacifies us, gives strength to spinal cord, detoxifies the body, improves functioning of heart and digestive system, ensures sound sleep, makes you emotionally stable. So what happens when we chant Om? When we chant Om, a vibration sound felt through our vocal cord that tears and opens up the sinuses. Chanting Om also has cardiovascular benefits. It reduces stress and relaxes our body, that brings down the blood pressure on the normal level and the heart beats with a regular rhythm. Om is just a sound. It is not just a sound. It is the wave of the universe. Om is a powerful sound that lies within us. Chanting Om is a sacred practice that helps our mind and body to energize. Excuse me. Sound of Om is considered sacred in Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. It is called the first sound of the universe. According to Hindu scriptures, Om connects all living beings to nature and the universe. We can chant Om silent or aloud. There are many benefits of chanting Om. So, good for stomach. Chanting Om is beneficial for our stomach health. Studies suggest that chanting Om on a regular basis relaxes the muscle of your stomach. If you have stomach ache, then chanting Om will be a remedy for you. Calms our mind. Effect on human mind. When we chant mantras or Om, our mind releases the positive energy that decreases the negative thoughts of stress. Chanting Om is an ancient practice that calms our mind and soul. Scientific studies have found that chanting mantras like Om for 10 minutes can decrease anxiety and depressive symptoms in the human body. So, this is the pictographical significance of Om. So, here light yellow color is of A, that is worldly, a conscious mind, that is the waking stage, Jagrat stage, and U is the Swapna stage, and M is the Sushupti stage, and last is the silence, that is the Turiya stage. So that is why it is depicted in dark yellow. And the another pictographic as waves in the ocean, but we are really one ocean of silence. So here we can clearly see. So the external circle is the A, that is the gross or the what we are experiencing around, and the second circle is U, that is the swapna, and third circle is Yam, that is sushupti, and the fourth circle is Turiya, that is the silence, utter silence. So Om Tat Sat. Let us know some more aspects about the concept of sound in the sessions to come. Thank you all for patience hearing. Thank you. Joshi,